Welcome to another edition of Things That Matter. I'm Gary Sutton, along with Charlie Giroux, who's running for governor here on the Republican ticket in the state of Pennsylvania. And we're down to like the last 20 days now before May 17th when you go to cast vote for governor. And, you know, one of the things that I've seen, Charlie, amidst the debates, of which I saw one last night that only had 4 people, and I think there were 9 candidates, but only 4 were on the stage. I'm seeing a lot of people who have not yet made up their mind. In some cases, don't even know who the candidates are yet. 50% of Pennsylvania Plus are still out there lurking, and no one's quite sure where they're going just yet, which leaves a lot of room for people to know who you are. So I was going to ask you today, we usually put a word out there. Today it's going to be, if you walked out in the front lawn and the guy walked out next to you and said, who are you and why are you running for governor, what would you tell them if they didn't know who you were?
Well, it's a great question, Gary, and our job obviously is to make sure that every Republican primary voter across Pennsylvania gets to know me in very special ways over the course of the next 2.5 weeks. And just before I answer the question, it was a disgrace that the Nexstar folks decided to exclude over half the Republican candidates,
right,
including some pretty heady candidates. I mean, this is a game they played. They took a poll 3 weeks ago and got some results. Those results would be very, very different if that poll was taken today. But they made the decision that they did. We had to live with it. But I think that voters increasingly want to see the candidates. And I've been at every debate to which I've been invited. And I will be at every debate to which I've been invited. A lot of the candidates can't say that. They duck, they choose, they pick, and they don't want to be asked the tough questions. I don't mind being asked the tough questions. So the tough question that you just asked is, who am I and why am I running? I'm a small businessman.
Right.
I'm somebody that's been involved in the life of this state in a variety of different ways for 6 decades. And it's not just been political stuff. I've done an awful lot in the community. And I'm very proud of the fact that, for example, the Central Penn Business Journal gave me its Icon Award a couple of years ago, the highest award it gives, a juried award that goes to people that have given significantly to the community over a long stretch of time and have earned the right to be called icons. And I'm proud of that. I really am. I'm very happy that they recognized that my work here has been for the Planning Commission, for the Cancer Society, for Habitat for Humanity, for an awful lot of things that don't involve the political process per se. But I do know what's going on up the street underneath the Capitol Dome. And so even though I'm an outsider, I know what's going on inside. I'm a businessman who knows how to run a business. And I think that I'm a patriot who has fought for our freedoms and our liberties for a long, long time. And I'm prepared to do that as governor. And the one thing I think that's coming through in all of these debates is that I'm fundamentally and uniquely prepared to be governor, to actually start, the old expression on day one, I kind of hate it because it's so worn out, but to immediately start to do the things that the people of Pennsylvania want and that they deserve.
You know, one of the things that people don't know about you, and maybe they should, you have some policy sessions down here on a regular basis in this very room we're sitting in right now, where you have a ton of people who crowd in here to be part of those policy sessions where you talk about the things that are affecting you out there right now as Pennsylvanians. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, it's been fun through the years, Gary, to have our monthly policy briefing here at Quantum Communications in our spacious world headquarters. And this conference room, as you know, holds about 15 people comfortably. And we've had as many as 125 in here. Don't tell the fire marshal. But we've crammed people in here because we've had really high-level speakers. We've had presidential candidates. We've had the Speaker of the United States Congress, Newt Gingrich, in here. We've had governors from other states. We've had Pennsylvania's governors, all the Republican ones, going back to Dick Thornburg through the years. And it's a great opportunity for people to talk off the record with a group of people that really care about Pennsylvania's future, about the things that really do matter and do impact us on a daily basis. And it's a freewheeling discussion, a lot of great ideas on the table, a lot of relationships built here. And I think you see the way that government really should work when you come to these policy briefings and watch what's going on.
If I was a guy who walked out of the lawn next to yours and I didn't know you, one of the things I'd find out, I think, in about 5 minutes, you really are passionate about liking this state. I mean, I have never, you and I have been friends for a long time, but one of the things that comes across is you really love the fact that you live in Pennsylvania. You're here and you enjoy just about everything about it. I've never seen anybody get as much enjoyment out of it as you have.
I do love Pennsylvania. I am Pennsylvanian to the core. I will die here. There's no doubt about it. And the only time I've ever questioned my love for Pennsylvania is about the 20th of February.
Yeah, I hear you. When you talk about the things that you can do as governor, we watch all these debates, we watch all these forums, we see all the different methods of people asking questions and so forth. And so many times someone will walk away from the TV and they'll say, geez, they're all kind of the same. But they're not all the same.
No.
How are you different?
Well, I think my life's experience makes me very different. As you know, Gary, I wasn't blessed to be born here. I was born in a foreign country. I've been naturalized as a citizen here. I think I have a unique understanding of what it really means to be an American and what a blessing it is to be a part of the greatest nation in the history of the world and to be part of the best state among the 50 states of these great United States. And I think that is a little bit different. Those that were blessed to be born here probably don't have the same appreciation as those of us that came from other places. But again, I think it goes back to what have you done? What have you really gotten into? It's easy to come on stage and say, I'm for this, I'm for that, I'm for the other thing, and yell and scream about, how bad things are in Pennsylvania and rile everybody up. But ultimately, you've got to know what you believe and why. You have to have a philosophy. And you have to be prepared to make that philosophy work in practical ways and real terms that meet people at their kitchen table or across their back fence or wherever you happen to be coming in contact with them.
The business that you're in, you have to solve problems. You have to help people to solve problems on a daily basis, things that really matter. A lot of people that are watching this across the state of Pennsylvania, be they Republican or Democrat, obviously, we got the primaries coming up here on May 17th, and that's what you're concerned about right now. But when you go by that primary, and now you're the general candidate for the party, Democrats are going to be looking too. So they're going to say, if you step in there, Charlie, we saw President Biden get up on inaugural day and say, I want to be governing for the people that didn't vote for me. You're the kind of guy that's used to solving problems. But it seems to me you're fairly open to other ideas too. You say, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, that's fine. But you're open to other ideas to talk about that because people want to know that when they come to the table, there's someone there that's ready to solve the problems, whether they have a D or an R behind their names.
Well, as you know, I began my career working for Ronald Reagan, and he taught me a lot of lessons. And so I look back, and many times I'll say, what would Reagan do? Because the ability to hear other people, to get other information, to get new ideas, and to be able to incorporate them based upon the principles and values that are at your core. Those shouldn't shake. Those shouldn't change. The core values, the core principles shouldn't change. You shouldn't be able to negotiate them away. But you ought to be able to surround them with things that practically apply to individual lives on a daily basis. And Reagan used to say, somebody that agrees with me 80% of the time is not my enemy.
Right.
And today we've gotten into a situation where if you don't agree with somebody 100% of the time on and not only agree with them, but agree with them adamantly, you're a bum.
Right.
And that just, it's troubling, but it's also kind of comical because if you've been around and know what it takes to get things done, if you know what it takes to truly govern, you reject that kind of thinking. And I hope that Pennsylvania will come to the place where we can talk to each other again, where we can get things done, where it's not my way or the highway, where it's not simply screaming and shouting, because the folks that are screaming and shouting, Gary, aren't getting things done. They're simply more and more frustrated every single day.
I would call you a pragmatic conservative. Would that be a fair statement about you, that you're a conservative, you hold the principles, and yet at the same time you're pragmatic enough to say, now, where is that middle ground? Where is that place, that 20% that I'm going to meet you on, that you may not agree with me on, and yet we can find a solution?
Well, I try to get things done.
Yeah.
And that ultimately, Gary, is what it's all about. Because if you're simply going to scream and yell and say, we're going to not move at all, well, then you're going to be spending a lot of time screaming and yelling because things aren't going to improve. My sense is that most people want improvement. And even if they are ideologically, quote unquote, doctrinaire, and I'm pretty conservative, as you know. I love how, some of the folks that don't like a more pragmatic, well, he's a rhino. Oh, really? Because these are folks that have just arrived on the scene.
They don't know you very well.
They've just arrived on the scene, and they don't see all the scars in my back from standing up and fighting for principle. So I will stand and fight for principle, always and first, but I will also work to make sure that we can get consensus, that we can build a majority for our opinion, because you can be a distinct minority and have everybody agree. But if you want to be a majority, there's going to be tension, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be lack of uniformity, because that's what a majority is. So I would rather be an uncomfortable majority than a very happy minority slapping each other on the back and telling each other
Right.
how wonderful you are because you towed the line on every single thing every single time and did it adamantly and forcefully.
And that tension is a healthy, good thing. People don't realize. You know, you just said something that's really important. You talked about this idea of Rhino. We throw an awful lot of adjectives around about people now. We have a lot of ists and phobes and all kinds of things because it's a convenient way out. You really don't have to discuss it. But when you stop to really look at the totality of someone, what they really believe, I think we have to make sure as citizens that we don't miss out that someone may have a very good way of explaining something, and yet even though they disagree with you that little smidgen over here and you've tuned them out, they've got a pretty good idea. And I think that's something maybe that you bring to the table that maybe a lot of other candidates don't right now. Talk about that.
Well, you're kind, but the Rhino thing kind of cracks me up because recently, if you disagreed on anything,
Right.
Rhino.
Right.
And by the same token, everybody on the other side is a libtard or this or that or the other thing. And these labels get thrown immediately without much thought at all.
Right.
And then that's supposed to be the end of the discussion because they're in column A, so therefore the discussion ends. I'd rather continue the discussion, and I'd rather continue the conversation until we get to a solution, because ultimately that's what's best for our kids, that's what's best for our future, that's what's going to make Pennsylvania truly great again. And President Trump was pretty good at that. He could bring people in and make things happen. What he did during his administration, and he certainly was no Rhino,
Right.
Was really remarkable, particularly with the economy, with unemployment at its lowest rates among the minority community in particular in history, and with an economy that was booming that unfortunately we've seen go exactly the opposite direction now by somebody who promised us that he was going to govern for all the people.
You talked about President Trump, former President Trump. And there are a lot of people falling over themselves and say, oh, Trump supports me, it's over. You haven't done that. And yet at the same time, you've had respect for the former president. Obviously, a lot of people agree with a lot of the policies he had, maybe disagree with some of the ways he went about it, even some of the ways he talked about people. Talk about his role in this particular election and his role in terms of endorsements or non-endorsing.
Well, he hasn't endorsed anybody in the governor's race. If he
Right.
chose to endorse me, I'd be happy about that, obviously. I don't know whether he will. Only President Trump knows that. So that's a decision that he and he alone will make. He has made very clear a non-endorsement of somebody who ran around the state telling everybody he was Trump's guy. That's
Right.
Bill McSwain. And
Right.
Donald Trump, I think, ended his candidacy with one sentence. He said, do not vote for Bill McSwain, a coward who has let his country down. That's a pretty damning statement from the former president. But whether or not he's going to endorse anybody, I don't know, Gary. We'll have to see. It's getting kind of late in the game, but I know he's coming into Pennsylvania next week, and we'll see what he says.
Talk about the last 20 days of the campaign, where you are right now. I asked you last week, I think, about what you've learned about yourself. But, as you get out to Pennsylvanians right now, and you talk about that tension, you want people to get to know you. Over 50% of people in Pennsylvania have not made their minds up yet, which is incredible when you think about 9 candidates. But again, the fact there are 9 candidates means there are 9 separate choices that they have to make right now. As you close the deal here in the coming days, what's the message that Charlie Giroux's making to those people?
Well, Gary, you point out what's so important, which is half the voters haven't made up their mind
Right.
yet. But what's more interesting when you look inside these polls is that of the people that say they've made up their mind, 60% say they're willing to change their mind between now and election day.
Right.
So this election is absolutely in flux. And the thing that we have to do is carry our message. And the message is going to be some things that we have not yet talked about. And I'm going to focus the last 2 weeks on where our fire should have been focused from the beginning and where mine has been. These other candidates are running around now cutting each other up and saying all sorts of awful things about each other. I'm not doing that. I'm going to focus my fire on Josh Shapiro, and I'm going to talk for the next 2 weeks about how we beat Josh Shapiro in November and then how we take Pennsylvania to the next level of really excellent government and real prosperity for every Pennsylvania and hope and growth and opportunity that I've been talking about since the beginning. So it's going to be 2 weeks of talking about Josh Shapiro. I'm going to be in every corner of the Commonwealth. We just put in, Gary, our first 600-mile day.
Oh, wow.
Think about that, 600 miles within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, all in one day. We're going to keep doing that because The good Lord blessed me with a high energy level, and I intend to put it to work in warp speed over the course of the next few days.
Well, Charlie, if we'd just met on the lawn for the first time today and I didn't know you, I know a lot more about you now. Appreciate you taking the time, my friend.
I hope I earned your trust and your vote. That's
You did that. You did that a long time ago. Charlie Giroux, Things That Matter. He's going to be on the road somewhere near you in the next 2 weeks. But check him out. He's got a lot to say, and he's got a lot to say that makes sense on the things that really matter. I'm Gary Sutton for Charlie Giroux. And don't forget, by the way, he also takes your phone call. It's 717-877-8194. That's 717-877-8194. And no, you won't get a secretary. You'll get him.
You will.
Every single time, just like I do whenever I call. Give Charlie a call. Talk to him about the things that really matter. Until next time, I'm Gary Sutton for Charlie Giroux. He's running for governor here in the state of Pennsylvania.
Businessman, conservative, patriot, Charlie Giroux for governor.